buzzsaw takeout. So like buzzsaw, giant takeout, buzzsaw, giant takeout, buzzsaw, giant takeout, buzzsaw, giant takeout. The buzzsaw is short poi, but then, now watch, as I release, I can release the poi to full length and then wrap it up to go back in. Release, wrap it up to go back in. Release, wrap it up to go back in. And what you could do is you could alternate. So you could do like, say, your right arm out and then wrap it back in. Your left arm out and then wrap it back in. Your right arm and back in. Your left arm, back in. Your right arm, back in. Your left arm, back in. And then it's using that same technique that we use when we're doing the chasing the sun into the buzzsaw. It's the same wrap, where when you're coming over the top, you stick your fingers out and it bisects the plane, so then you pinch and wrap to get it shorter. Overhand here, you sweep back. As you come over the top, you put both hands out, and as you're putting both hands out, they're bisecting the plane of the poi, which is what makes them wrap. So then you just do the same thing with the takeout. You release to the outside. As you bring it to the outside, you release it from your fingers that are making it shorter, so then it's full length, right? Release to full length, do your giant, and then at whatever point, when you're coming back in from your giant, you bring it to the inside plane, stick the fingers back out so it wraps around. So release, full length, wrap around your fingers, it's back in. All you do is just stick your fingers inside. What would probably be helpful for you is practicing just that wrap up a bunch, like this, where you do the extension, come in, wrap. Release, extension, come in. Release, and wrap and in. Which from the side would look like this. I'm on the inside, release to full length, wrap it. 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 And you know, the cool thing about the asymmetry of this movement, I mean, you know me and my 7-layer dip thing and how I like that whole size differential thing. I think the cool thing about this is, especially if you do the full release, when you go to the outside, the difference between these two is pretty profound. Like it's a huge size difference. And because you're already doing an asymmetric move, if you only learn how to do the release to full size with one hand, there's like no shame in that game. Now, if you're too lazy and you don't want to learn how to release it to full length, like this, you can just do it like this, where you bring it to the outside. So this doesn't have as dynamic as big a range of difference between the two, but you can keep it the same size, and that works too. And that might be easier to switch one hand, the other hand, one hand, the other hand. I think this is a very high bang for the buck, low challenge technique wise. Like this is not this is not nearly as challenging as doing something like going from a cap to a giant to a cap when you're going opposite to same direction. I don't think it's as demanding. So big bang for the buck. We just did this whole thing in overhand, but you could do it in underhand too. I mean, the underhand is actually kind of interesting too, because I think the wrap in underhand is easier to do. So for example, I can release to full length, come back here, wrap it up here, and bring it back in. So it's almost like you wrap, 2-pedal, back to buzzsaw. Release long, wrap, 2-pedal, back to buzzsaw. Or you could release full extension, 2-pedal, back to buzzsaw. Or not release at all. All of it, in my opinion, just feeds into the whole size matters thing. And I mean that in all seriousness, from a performance perspective, I do think changes in size do add dynamism, and I do think it matters from the perspective of what the audience sees and how it makes it more interesting when you have the expansion and contraction of the size of the poi. Instead of doing, when I did my buzzsaw, I did like a basic wrap, but if you do like a micro wrap, like this, and you release and come back in, whoa, that's a huge contrast. And then that wrap going back in, because it's going around so many times, adds another interesting effect as well.